December 21st, 1945. Tokyo, Japan. Inside his office at the Daiichi Life Insurance Building, the nerve center of the Allied occupation, General Douglas MacArthur is at work. From this building, he effectively governs defeated Japan. An aide enters with an urgent telegram sent from Europe. MacArthur scans it rapidly. For an instant, his face, usually impossible to read, reveals a fleeting reaction. It might be shock. It might be grief. He places a telegram on his desk. General George S. Patton Jr. has died. Earlier that morning, Patton passed away in a military hospital in Heidelberg, Germany. 12 days earlier, a car accident had broken his neck, leaving him paralyzed. He was 60 years old. He had endured 2 world wars, commanded troops in repeated campaigns, and fought across North Africa, Sicily, France, and Germany. Few American generals were more recognizable or more celebrated, yet he had not been killed in battle. Instead, his life ended as a result of injuries from what initially appeared to be a minor automobile collision on a quiet German road. Witnesses later recalled that MacArthur remained seated in silence for several moments after reading the telegram. Then he reached for paper and began to write. This is the story of MacArthur's response to Patton's death, what he chose to say, how he chose to say it, and what his words reveal about his view of Patton and of military greatness. To understand why Patton's death carried weight for MacArthur, it is necessary to examine the relationship between the two men. MacArthur and Patton were never close. During World War II, they fought on opposite sides of the globe, MacArthur commanding in the Pacific, Patton leading forces in Europe. They encountered each other only rarely and exchanged little correspondence. Their professional lives developed along parallel tracks that seldom crossed. Still, they were not strangers. Each recognized qualities in the other shaped by similar backgrounds and experiences. MacArthur was born in 1880. Patton followed 5 years later, in 1885. Both were raised in families deeply rooted in military tradition. MacArthur's father, Arthur MacArthur Jr., was a distinguished Civil War officer and later a general. Patton's grandfather had served as a Confederate colonel, and military heritage held an almost sacred place in the Patton household. Each man attended the United States Military Academy, though in different eras. MacArthur graduated in 1903, ranked first in his class. Patton completed his studies in 1909, requiring an additional year due to academic difficulties. Their earliest confirmed interaction dates to World War I. In 1918, both officers were stationed in France. MacArthur commanded the 42nd Infantry Division, known as the Rainbow Division. Patton led emerging armored units. Military documentation indicates that they met at least once during the war, though details of that meeting are scarce. In the years following the armistice, their careers occasionally intersected again in the United States. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, both advanced steadily through the ranks of the small peacetime army. They encountered one another at official gatherings and in Washington, but they did not develop a close working relationship. Their most consequential connection occurred in 1932, during the Bonus Army crisis. Thousands of World War I veterans assembled in Washington, D.C., demanding early payment of promised service bonuses. President Herbert Hoover ordered the Army to disperse the encampments. MacArthur, serving as Army Chief of Staff, directed the operation. Patton, a major, commanded cavalry and armored units assigned to carry it out. The event quickly became controversial. Contemporary accounts indicate that Patton executed his orders without hesitation. In later years, both men would recall the episode differently, but at the time, Patton was acting under MacArthur's command during a politically sensitive and widely criticized action against fellow veterans. After 1932, their paths separated once again. MacArthur departed for the Philippines, where he focused on organizing and training the Philippine Army. Patton remained stateside, continuing his service in the cavalry before transitioning into armored warfare. During World War II, they served in entirely different theaters and had almost no direct interaction. Available records suggest little, if any, correspondence between them during the conflict. Each followed the other's progress through reports and public accounts, but they were not collaborators and did not communicate regularly. Even so, they shared important similarities in their military philosophy. Both believed strongly in aggressive action, speed, and decisive maneuver. Both cultivated carefully shaped public personas. MacArthur became synonymous with his corncob pipe and sunglasses. Patton with his ivory-handled pistols and blunt, often profane speeches. Both men were also controversial figures. MacArthur frequently clashed with civilian leadership and proved difficult to control. Patton slapped soldiers, made inflammatory public statements, and repeatedly caused problems for Eisenhower. By December 1945, the war had ended. MacArthur was serving as Supreme Commander for the Allied powers in Japan, wielding extraordinary authority during the occupation. Patton, meanwhile, was assigned to command the 15th Army in Germany, a largely administrative unit responsible for compiling the war's historical record. But Patton's situation in Germany had become increasingly unstable. He had made public remarks comparing Nazi Party membership to affiliation with American political parties, comments that sparked outrage. In October 1945, Eisenhower removed Patton from command of the Third Army and reassigned him to the far less influential 15th Army. Patton viewed the move as a demotion, and it left him deeply dissatisfied. Entries from Patton's personal diary in October and November 1945 reveal a man who felt sidelined and resentful. He believed his service was no longer valued and grew increasingly bitter about how he was being treated. He was making plans to return to the United States and leave active military service altogether. Then, on December 9, 1945, Patton was traveling by car near Mannheim, Germany. According to the official accident report, the vehicle in which he was riding struck a U.S. Army truck at relatively low speed. During the collision, Patton was thrown forward, and his head slammed into a metal partition inside the car. The blow fractured his neck and severed his spinal cord, leaving him completely paralyzed from the neck down. For the next 12 days, Patton remained hospitalized in Heidelberg. Medical records and eyewitness accounts indicate that he was conscious and mentally alert, though incapable of movement. He understood the severity of his condition and knew that he was dying. On December 21, 1945, at 5:50 p.m., Patton died. The official cause of death was listed as a pulmonary embolism and congestive heart failure. Word of Patton's death moved rapidly through military channels. According to multiple accounts, the news reached MacArthur in Tokyo on December 21st, or December 22nd by Tokyo time, due to the time difference. MacArthur's initial response is recorded in recollections from officers who were present. They report that MacArthur read the telegram silently, without remark, and then requested to be left alone for several minutes. After this short interval, according to those same sources, MacArthur summoned his staff and began dictating a statement regarding Patton's death. The statement was preserved in military archives and later printed in newspapers. The official text read, "The death of General Patton is a great loss to the Army and to the nation. He was one of the most brilliant soldiers America has produced. His daring and resourcefulness were matched by his tactical skill and strategic vision. He was a great captain who will take his place in history with the finest field commanders of all time." The language was formal and restrained, consistent with official military tributes. However, individuals present during its drafting later recalled that MacArthur initially spoke at greater length about Patton before condensing his thoughts into the final version. According to the later account of his aide, Colonel Sidney Huff, MacArthur remarked that Patton was a warrior in the purest sense, that men like Patton are made for war and tend to fade once war ends. Huff's recollection suggests that MacArthur viewed Patton as a man whose true element was combat and who found peacetime existence difficult. This perspective was not intended as criticism. MacArthur himself was a commander who flourished in wartime and found peacetime constraints frustrating. Once finalized, MacArthur's statement was transmitted to Washington and released publicly. Newspaper reports dated December 22, 1945, printed his tribute alongside statements from other senior leaders. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who had commanded Patton in Europe, described him as one of the most brilliant soldiers of his time, crediting his boldness, energy, and tactical genius as essential to Allied victory. Army Chief of Staff George Marshall stated that Patton's death represented a major loss to both the Army and the nation, calling him a combat leader without equal. President Harry Truman also issued a statement, saying that the country had lost one of its greatest soldiers and praising Patton's service in 2 world wars as embodying the highest traditions of American military leadership. Yet according to multiple accounts, MacArthur's private reflections on Patton extended beyond his official remarks. His biographer, William Manchester, drawing on interviews with individuals who worked closely with MacArthur, reported that MacArthur privately expressed deep admiration for Patton's aggressive command style and battlefield achievements. In these accounts, MacArthur regarded Patton as a kindred spirit, a commander who understood that war demanded audacity, relentless pressure, and a willingness to accept risk. MacArthur recognized these traits because he shared them himself. At the same time, the same sources suggest that MacArthur also acknowledged the darker parallel between them. Both men were controversial. Both had clashed with civilian authorities and superiors. Both had been criticized for insubordination and for remarks that caused political complications. MacArthur's characterization of Patton as one of the most brilliant soldiers America had ever produced carried particular weight. Those familiar with MacArthur noted that he seldom offered such unequivocal praise to fellow generals. Confident in his own abilities, he was often dismissive of others. His words about Patton therefore reflected genuine respect. In the days following Patton's death, MacArthur received additional details about the circumstances. According to several accounts, he was disturbed by the fact that Patton had died in an accident rather than in battle. Colonel Sidney Huff later recalled MacArthur remarking on the tragedy of a warrior like Patton not falling in combat. The comment reflected a romantic conception of military service that both men shared, the belief that great commanders were meant to die in war, not in peacetime mishaps. MacArthur did not attend Patton's funeral. Official records show that Patton was buried on December 24, 1945, in the American Military Cemetery in Luxembourg among the soldiers of his Third Army. MacArthur remained in Tokyo, absorbed in the responsibilities of governing occupied Japan. Available records indicate that he neither sent a personal representative nor offered any tribute beyond his formal public statement. The physical distance between Tokyo and Luxembourg, combined with MacArthur's responsibilities as Supreme Commander in Japan, made attendance at Patton's funeral impractical. In the years that followed, MacArthur would occasionally refer to Patton in speeches and interviews. According to multiple accounts, whenever he did so, he spoke of Patton with respect, consistently describing him as an exceptional combat commander. In his 1964 memoir, Reminiscences, MacArthur devoted a short passage to Patton. In it he wrote, "George Patton was one of the great captains of war. His tactical brilliance and aggressive leadership contributed immeasurably to Allied victory in Europe." The tone echoed his public statement from 1945, admiring and respectful, yet restrained and impersonal. The historical record indicates that MacArthur and Patton respected one another, but were never close. They recognized shared qualities: boldness, aggressiveness, showmanship, and a romantic conception of warfare. At the same time, they operated in different spheres and had limited direct contact. When MacArthur spoke publicly at the time of Patton's death, his words were formal and appropriate. The death of General Patton is a great loss to the Army and to the nation. He was one of the most brilliant soldiers America has produced. Preserved in official documents and contemporary newspaper accounts, these statements show MacArthur honoring a fellow general in the conventional language of military tribute. Yet accounts from individuals close to MacArthur suggest that his private reflections went further. Privately, MacArthur appears to have viewed Patton as a warrior meant for the battlefield, not for administrative roles. He saw Patton's death as symbolic, the passing of a type of commander who excelled in war, but struggled once peace returned. MacArthur himself would later confront similar difficulties. Like Patton, he was a combat leader prone to clashes with civilian authority. Like Patton, he would ultimately be removed from command, dismissed by President Harry Truman in 1951 for insubordination during the Korean War. It is possible that MacArthur saw in Patton's fate a reflection of his own future. Both men were warriors who found it difficult to adapt to peacetime military life. Both were controversial figures. Both were formidable in combat, yet challenging to manage. What MacArthur said publicly when Patton died was measured and fitting. What he may have thought, that he and Patton were alike, soldiers shaped for war who struggled once the fighting ended, was largely left unspoken. The historical record provides MacArthur's official statement and a handful of reported private remarks. Together, they convey respect and recognition of Patton's military accomplishments, while leaving much of MacArthur's personal reaction undocumented. What is certain is this: when George Patton died, MacArthur described him as one of the most brilliant soldiers America had ever produced, a great captain destined to stand among the finest field commanders in history. Coming from MacArthur, a man not known for generous praise of peers, those words carry particular significance. They place Patton at the highest level of American military leadership, not merely in MacArthur's opinion, but in the judgment of history. Perhaps that was what mattered most to both men, not the nature of their relationship with each other, but their legacy as warriors and commanders. In honoring Patton, MacArthur affirmed that Patton had earned a lasting place among the great military figures of the past. For two generals deeply concerned with legacy and historical standing, that acknowledgment carried weight. MacArthur was declaring that Patton had achieved what both men sought: greatness in profession of arms, and remembrance in the pantheon of military history. That was what MacArthur said when Patton died, words that granted Patton the form of immortality both men desired. This video presents historical events based on documented sources, including MacArthur's official statements preserved in military archives and newspapers, recollections from staff officers, memoirs, and contemporary news reporting. Interpretations of these events may vary among historians and scholars. Viewers are encouraged to consult multiple sources when examining this period of military history. This content is intended for educational purposes.